everyone, and welcome to the 2023 PLAC Legislative Internship Programme podcast. My name is Mari Amadi Ebina, representing Delta State, and today we're going to be talking about youth political power and engagement beyond elections. I also have my cohort members and colleagues here with me to discuss today's topic, so I'll go ahead and allow them to introduce themselves.
Hi everyone, my name is Samuel Ajayi, and it's a pleasure to be here.
Hi, I'm Rachel Danipele, representing River State.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Sunday Christopher Olubi, and I represent Ogun State, and thank you for having us.
So as I had mentioned earlier, today's topic is about youth political power and engagement beyond elections. So we know that young people made their mark on the 2023 general elections with a high level of youth voter turnout, and almost 40% of Nigerians are between the ages of 15 and 39. So my first question is for you, Samuel. Why do you think many young Nigerians registered in unprecedented numbers for the 2023 election?
Thank you very much for that question, Mary. Looking at the data, obviously we could see that a lot of young people showed up on the election day and even in registration. But I want to point us to a more important fact, because it really mirrors Nigeria's population as a whole. So about 70% of Nigeria's current population is youth. It's youth. 42% of that is below the age of 15.
Yes.
So it is not going to be strange if we see a lot of people getting interested in election law. But beyond that, there's a lot of energy that comes from the first time young people really gathered and got involved in the political process vis-a-vis the EndSARS 2020 protests. And that energy has carried forward into the election that we recently had this year. And that is something that I felt has driven a lot of interest that young people have in the political process. And for the benefit of Nigeria, it is a very, very good thing. Really good thing.
Thank you for that answer. Over to you, Rachel. So, like you had mentioned, I think the EndSARS protest kind of drove a lot of, or rather incited a lot of passion in the youth. Do you think young people are still confident in their civic power?
Thank you very much, Marie. I would say despite the, the outcome of the elections, the mistrust many Nigerian youths got, maybe expecting a particular candidate or expecting their votes to be heard and to be counted and all, I would say that we still have that confidence that, our civic power is still, with us, and we still have a lot to do with that. So I would ask or, support the motion or the notion that, conversations, peer-to-peer conversations, especially on our voting rights, what we should do, what we can do, should be things that we should be discussing as youth. So anytime you find yourself in an engagement with your fellow age grade, which we're always doing, most times we go and lash on Twitter, instead of doing that, we should talk about our voting rights and what we can do to make the next election favor us or make us feel better. I'll say that.
Okay, so just to throw out these questions to everybody, did anybody vote in this year's elections?
Yes, of course. I started voting since 2015.
I voted in this.
Okay, and Samuel?
Unfortunately, I could not vote. I moved to a new city, so...
That's a valid reason. So again, over to you, Rachel. With the responses that you've heard from our cohort members, do you think young people will still be able to convince their peers to vote and to speak about elections and politics?
Before I would answer that, I would say I think that would be like the the positive side. But let me go on the negative first. Few people I have spoken to would always go on the no. They're not interested because of what happened. They took their time. They came out using the EndSARS, which was on the police brutality and all. Then the Twitter ban. The youths felt they had a lot to do and to say, and then only for their dreams to be shattered by the election that is even still going through rigorous, processes. But then I believe, yes, we would, and more would. My sister was complaining the other day about, doing advocacy and stuff, and some of the connections she got wasn't actually meeting her expectation, and I told her she has to continue at it. She has to keep speaking, whether they are understanding or not. As they say, little drops of water makes a mighty ocean. So you have to continue. So I'm positive that, you know, it would spark interest and make us move forward and do better.
Thank you for that answer, Rachel. This next question is for you, Sunday. How can young people be motivated to continue to push for justice, political inclusion, and social change in Nigeria?
Okay, thank you very much, Marie. In 2020, during the NSAS protest, I could remember very well, I was very much active in the movement, right? So during that time, and in my entire life, this is the first time I think young people, you know, got the attention of the government, you know, and it was really, really interesting. Now, moving forward, of course, we've lost our comrades to the protests and the movements, and it's so sad and all of that. So moving forward, I think for young people to push for social inclusion and justice, I think we do not necessarily need to go on the street to protest for our voices to be heard by government and all of that. We can actually do this by advocacy, by partnering with CSOs like PLAC and other CSOs to, you know, get our voices heard and also get into the politics of Nigeria, participate in politics, participate in just like what we're doing here. Get yourself involved, because if you could realize that in Nigeria today, right now, most young people, a good majority of young people, don't really care about what goes on in government, right? Be it legislative arm, the executive, and the judiciary. If not during elections or prior to elections, we don't really care. After elections, everybody goes their way. But I think we young people can do better. We can actually get our voices heard by advocating. We do not really necessarily need to go to the street to protest and all of that. We can actually do better by getting involved in terms of advocacy, in terms of activism, and all of that. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that answer, Sunday. Now, my next question is for Samuel. According to voter registration data from the Independent National Electoral Commission, which is the one that's responsible for the elections in Nigeria, more than half of new voters are young people aged 18 to 34 years. You know, Sunday just finished talking to us about advocacy and activism and just generally getting involved in the whole process of elections, governance, etc. How do you think young people can be more forward-thinking in that aspect and also action-oriented?
That's a very good question, Marie, and I think it warrants a background just to establish where we're coming from. So earlier, Rachel was mentioning that some people are not pleased with the outcome of the election, and some of them are disappointed. And of course, I have witnessed people express that sentiment everywhere on social media, but I want to always point out to an important point, which is that Nigeria is about 50% rural, 50% urban, and even at that, we should also be aware that the population distribution of Nigeria has, some very, very interesting peculiarities, right? And also, we should also be aware that Nigerians as a whole, don't share the same ideology or understanding of the political process. So that means that the outcomes of the election, right, is a reflection, generally speaking, right, of the voices of the different youths that we have within the country. Now, the next question would be then, how do we then make sure that, the young person in the rural area, the young person in the city, that their interests are aligned, right? Because, of course, we are talking about being forward-thinking. We are talking about being involved in the political process. We are talking about all of these important things. We also have to talk about the different interests and yearnings of youths across Nigeria. And so that brings us to the question, what are the lessons we've learned here? And then how are we then taking those lessons and taking them forward, right? What have we learned, right? How are we seeing the voter distribution regarding the election data, regarding the different political candidates? Where did they get most of their votes? And how did they get most of their votes? Now, these are pointers for us. And then I like to always say this, that the political process within the Nigerian context is a marathon and it's not a sprint. Remember, the Fourth Republic is just barely 23 years old. And because of that, that presents to us unique challenges. And so, as young people, we need to then look at it from that perspective, that, okay, what are our quick wins? We had York to run some few years back. Now we have about, young people in descent. I heard about a House of Rep member who is 27 years old.
Yeah.
Those are things we can then build on, right? So that means then, now the citizen process begins from election and continues into holding public officials accountable. I may not have voted for the president or my rep or the person in power, but I do have the office of the citizens allows me to hold him accountable. Yeah. So now the budget process is on the way. Now we can get involved in that process. We can look at the line items. We can scrutinize it and call it out online. We can say, okay, these are the wrong things that there. We can organize, right? All of us here, we have learned a lot about how the National Assembly works. We can organize, we can get those people involved, and that's how we become long-term. That's how the long-term planning comes in. And then as we do that, we get our own larger and larger share of people. This is a long-term thing. We have just a few people in the HOR. Maybe in the next 10 years, several of us here will also already be in the assembly, and then we'll keep pushing on the agenda.
Wow, thank you so much, Samuel, for such a loaded answer. Just to piggyback off of what you said, you kind of, and I think that kind of brings us to our next question. You had stated that there is a difference between the urban youth and the rural youth. And before I ask Sunday my next question, I just want to know how many of us here are active on social media. I know I am.
No, quite active.
All of us here are very active, right?
Yes.
And I know that when we have an opinion or two to share, we carry our phone, go on Twitter or go on X, and just quickly throw out some words and then post it, and we have our opinions, out for the world to either scrutinize, agree, or disagree with. However, there are some people who do not have mobile phone penetration. There are some areas where there's poor internet connectivity and lack of internet connectivity and internet penetration. So my question for you, Sunday, is what is your take on the millions of vulnerable Nigerian youths in rural areas whose voices are not heard via social media?
Okay, now it's very, very, very heartbreaking in this age and time where we've come into the digital age, right? And some millions of young persons do not have access to the internet, social media, and all of that. So it's now on our part, right? We that are learned, we that are learned in some field of social media. Thank you. To take their aspiration, take their ideas, and put it out there. Every day we go to these rural areas, or if you're not opportune to go there, you find time, you go there, you ask questions. What are your dreams? What are your aspirations? What do you think, or where do you think government can, help you, and all of that, and then take it back to social and put it on the social media. You said X, you put it there, and you get their voices heard through these platforms and all of that. And it also reminds me, in 2021, right, the last administration banned Twitter, and I think it's very, very, very disheartening for any government at all to ban social media like that because of one thing or another. And I think it is moving forward, I think it is very pertinent for we young people to advocate to government on ways by which social media can be very beneficial to the government itself, and also to every Nigerian citizens, especially the people living in the rural areas.
Thank you so much, Sunday, for that answer. And before I move on to my next question, I just want to bring us up to speed on what we've been talking about, youth participation, youth political power. And, there's been a lot of would I say, uncertainty in terms of where our future holds, or what our future is like for the youth in Nigeria. So my question to you, Rachel, is how can you convince your fellow youth that young people can still change the country? And this work goes beyond just elections, and what can they do, or how can they engage themselves beyond the elections? Yes, it's positive, and to some extent a good enough start that we have young people around Nigeria being interested in voting, registering for their PVCs, engaging on social media, sharing their disheartened interest, or rather sharing their lack of trust for the government. How do you think we can convince young people that there's still hope in the future for us?
Okay, thank you. I think I would take my cue from what Sunday said earlier, where we see youths and everybody sits back after the election is concluded. For us to go beyond this and have the change that we want, we have to engage grassroots movements, activism, by coming together, talking, finding out what went wrong, what we can do, and find out ways that we can involve ourselves as youths in governance. Many youths don't even know they have a right to vote, they have a right to even ask questions, they have a right to hold their leaders accountable. They don't even know anything. So we can move beyond elections by engaging grassroots movements and all this advocacy during and after the voting cycle, so that by the next 4 years, when they're saying another voting, another time to vote is here, the youths are now aware. They're now more informed of what they are seeking. All this vote buying and rigging and all this will now, to come to an end, because I now know what I want and I know how to get what I want.
Okay, thank you so much, Rachel, for your answer. And just to close out our podcast, I just want to briefly state that, and I think Rachel has succinctly explained, the importance of knowledge and educating ourselves on the electoral process, the 3 arms of government, and even beyond that. And it does start from grassroots initiative. We often hear this statement that knowledge is power, and you can't really do much if you don't know what you're supposed to do or how to go about it. And that's just to even thank PLAC for this initiative and this program.
Yeah.
I came into this program with a very, very limited knowledge of the National Assembly, of our legislative arm, and through our trainings, through our workshops, and even with our engagements with our committees, with our legislators, and so many employees within the National Assembly, I've learned quite a lot. I've understood the process of legislation, and it goes beyond what we hear on TV. It goes beyond what we read on the newspapers. So I just like to thank my cohort members, Samuel, Rachel, and Sunday, for participating and enlightening us on youth political participation in the elections. And
Thank you too. Thank you too.
Thank you for sharing your knowledge with the world, and next time. Bye.